Hello, and welcome to the weekly reading. I am showing you a beautiful little jasmine flower here, which is a 5-pointed flower, which links to Venus, who has just stationed direct today. So that's good news, except she will be in her post-retrograde shadow for a good long while, till sometime in October. I don't have the date in front of me. And I am using Intune and Divana oils. I am using selenite crystal and some other little crystal-y bits as well, some fluorite and some chrysocolla. Yes, chrysocolla. So let's just take a moment to think of a card between 1 and 4. We actually have a fifth card, but I feel like that's a collective card for everyone. So choose your number between 1 and 4, and we'll dive into this week's reading. It has Venus stationing direct and going into her post shadow, which is a solution time. And we have Mercury still retrograde, in fact, making his conjunction, his kiss with the sun this week. And we also have the last quarter moon of the cycle in Gemini. So we are sort of closing out the lunar cycle, and it's a good time to start reflecting. So let's jump into the reading. And I have to say, I think it's because we're graduating to higher grade, because the last few weeks have been pretty tough in the reading front, and this week is going to follow suit. But like I say, if we're getting tough weeks, it's because we're ready for them. We're ready for the hard truths, the tough medicine. And that is definitely what we're getting. What is interesting here is we have a swords, a cups, a pentacles, and a wands. So one card for each element, which is quite unusual, and one major arcana card, which is not the easiest of cards. And if I had to give this week a theme from this set of cards, I would say resistance. Stubbornness, resistance to moving forward, denial. That's a place we need to work on. And then because we've got the Tower card upside down, that is definitely the collective theme is what are the things that you are not prepared to burn to the ground to start something new? What is it that we are clawing and clinging to, even though we know it needs to change? Those are the things that are kind of being pulled out of the woodwork. And if we consider that we're in the post-retrograde, Venus retrograde shadow, and we're still in the reflective Mercury retrograde, this is a good week to sort some of that stuff out, but it's going to be uncomfortable if we're doing the work well. That's the good bad news, or the bad good news. It's going to be uncomfortable, but if it's uncomfortable, you're doing it right. Because the Six of Swords in its upright form is a kind of acceptance of the fact that it's time to move on with something. She's a little sad, a little dejected. She's wrapped in her cloak. She's carrying her baggage, and she's allowing these ravens to help her cross the channel to the next place. And some of the ravens have left her. She's had to let go of certain things, certain people, in its upright form. But there is this forward movement and acceptance. In its upside down, there is the resistance to making those choices. There is potentially denying assistance and help from people. That's a big one with this card. So why are we don't want help because of what? And we won't move forward because why? Those are the kind of questions you have to start asking yourself this week, because there's just so much of this resistance to forward momentum, because there is the uncomfortable, because there is the release of certain things, and that's hard. So the Swords is an air card, which really would bring us into that Mercury retrograde. So ask the questions, reflect on the reasons that you are not prepared to get out of a job that hasn't been serving you, or a relationship, or cut off ties with maybe a friend or a coworker or a colleague. It could be so many things. It's different for each of us. So just check in with that for yourself and ask yourself those questions. And then the Knight is a really romantic, lovable chap in his upright form, but upside down again, he can be his cups, his water. He can be moody. He can be delusional. He wants it to go his perfect little romantic way, but the truth is things happen in life, and it's not always sunshine and roses. You can't always just make everything right with a I love you, I'll do better next time. This is the kind of guy that's now saying upside down is, why won't you just accept? And this can actually be a person. This can be a young, sort of, generally it's a young male energy, but that's not really gender specific, because It could be the young male part of somebody or even yourself. So you might want to look at the part of you that's kind of trying to gaslight you. Or there's somebody in your outside world that's trying to gaslight you because they want everything to be forgiven with a bunch of roses, riding on their white horse, and then everything will feel fine. So where are you doing that in your life to the point that you are giving over? Maybe you gaslight yourself and then you tell yourself everything's fine and you don't have to change. That kind of energy, right? And then we have the Two of Pentacles, and twos are always about choice points and change, really, and making that decision. And between body, the lower one, and mind, between matter and spirit, we can look at it in numerous ways. And it's Pentacles, so it's how do we build that? How do we take practical steps forward? And upside down, she's like, I'm just not ready. I know there's a lot of things I could do. I know that there's practical steps and grounding foundational stuff that I need to do, but I just don't want to. It's kind of a bit like an ostrich burying her head in the sand. And you can see these two are kind of like leaning into one another in a sense. He's throwing a tantrum and she's going, and I don't want to. So, it's like both a little bit childlike in their resistance to making the changes that need to be made. The only upright card we do have this week is the Seven of Wands, and these wands that you see pointing here are kind of coming into attack. And so she needs to stay grounded. She needs to stay safe and protected. So what is that for you? And it's Virgo season. So there is a very big chance that you are criticizing, gaslighting, causing that drama for yourself, because the inner critic is strong, and the desire for perfectionism, and also procrastinating to the point where you don't end up getting anything done, which is kind of that denial space in some ways. So this is like, how do I go into my center, into my light, into my soul self, into my heart, and know what it is that I need to step forward from, and protect myself from those vicious energies of my own that are coming in for the attack. But also, I do feel like there's outside stuff going on here, and oftentimes the world will reflect for you what's going on internally. So maybe you have an aggressive colleague that's coming in for the attack and undermining you all the time, but that means that there's probably that part inside of you that's doing the same. And oftentimes it's harder for us to observe that internally, so we have to attract it in the external world in order to start eventually, hopefully, recognizing it in ourselves. So this card does remind us we need to get grounded, we need to get centered. This is a week to get out in nature, do your meditation, do your yoga, whatever it is that you do to keep safe in yourself and centered so that you can see these outside and internal dangers. And then the Tower is an all fall down, burn it to the ground kind of energy. And upside down, there is this resistance to doing that. Or for some people, it might be that the Tower moment is coming to an end. You'll know if that's true for you, if you've been through a big Tower moment. Saying that, I do feel like we've kind of been going through waves of Tower after Tower after Tower. So we'll have to see what happens. But sometimes we just need to let things break, and then we need to fix them again, or rebuild them, rather than resisting. I don't know if you've ever experienced that thing. I keep myself from getting sick by using all my many, many tools. And I keep myself together, and eventually my body will just throw me into bed really, really sick for a week or whatever, because that's actually what it needs sometimes, to just roll with something, get it out of your system. And I kind of feel like that's what our week is. Just burn it to the ground, roll with it, get it out of your system, and then come back for the rebuild. I hope this has been helpful. Please like, share, follow, subscribe, and I will be back with you next week for another episode of our weekly readings. And stay strong this week. Next week we have the new moon in Virgo.